Today I'm going to show you how I colour test my new inks onto t-shirts before I start printing. So all you need is a blank t-shirt, a screen and the pot of ink that I showed you how to mix last week. I always just get an old t-shirt that it doesn't matter if I mess up, and this one is just a seconds t-shirt, so I save these up for colour testing. I'm just going to give the ink a little bit of a stir. This can get a little bit messy, so wear gloves if you want, but as long as you wash your hands with warm water and soap, the ink will come off of your fingers. So all I do here before I start printing is dip my finger in the ink, and I just do colour rubs. So once you've rubbed the ink into the t-shirt, this is the colour that you're going to get from the screen. So rub it as much into the surface as you can, and this will give you a good idea. Some people this is enough to colour test, but I always like to do it with the screen as well. From this colour test, I can already tell that it's a little bit too light, so I'm going to add some more pigment. So I'm going to put some more orange in and some more red. Once I've put the amount in that I want, then I'm going to give it a quick stir again, making sure that all of the pigment is properly stirred into the rest of the ink. Just keep an eye on the consistency of the ink and make sure it doesn't get too thick when you're adding loads of pigment. So I always like to keep my ink quite thin. And I'm going to do this second ink rub, and you can see the difference that just this tiny bit of pigment makes to the recipe. Once you're happy with the ink rub test, you can then move to a screen and just test it on one of your small screens, which is what I like to do. Some people don't bother doing this, they just go straight to printing, but I always like to just be sure. So I make sure I tape my screen all around the edges, which is what you should always do when you're using a brand new screen anyway, because it just stops any ink seeping out from the seams of the screen. So when you're ready, pop some ink on, just a small amount for testing. You don't need to go crazy. Always test your inks with a heavy squeegee. Some people like to take shortcuts with colour testing and just use plastic cards, but I'm going to show you the difference that the weight of a squeegee makes between using one of these plastic cards. For a start, it just doesn't let the ink through the screen at all. So always make sure that you've got a squeegee that's made for textile printing that is really nice and heavy. And always use a squeegee that's appropriate to the art size. I can't stand it when I see people screen printing with a squeegee that's smaller than the actual size of the artwork. It just doesn't make any sense. I'm going to do 2 passes with the screen as usual. Another thing to look out for is if your ink is too heavy, it can seep through the front of the t-shirt and make an impression on the inside of the back of the t-shirt if you're not using anything in between the 2 layers. So just make sure that when you're adjusting your ink, when you're sampling, that you are balancing out the pigment and the binder so that it's not too pigment heavy. I have adjusted this recipe quite a lot, so I am going to add a little bit of binder in a minute. So I'm going to give this another mix because I've added some more pigment in, and I'm just going to scrape the excess off of the screen and put that in the pot. There isn't any point in going to too much trouble cleaning the screen between prints, because sampling is supposed to be a fast process, and really it's just to get the colour right. So I always just scrape off the ink and then I start again. When I'm ready to print again, I just move the screen over so that it's kind of out of the way from the print I've just done, and then I put the new ink back on the screen, and then I do another 2 pulls with the squeegee. I'll make little tweaks like this to the recipe as many times as I need to, and it might be that I just do this once and I'm happy, or I might end up doing this 5, 6 or 7 times before I decide that the recipe is how I want it. I'm just going to fast forward a little bit through this because the process is the same. This time I'm just going to add a little bit more binder just to balance out the amount of pigment that I've been putting in. So it's going to get a little bit faster here because I do this quite a few times. But a good thing to do while you're doing this is to also experiment with the amount of pulls of the squeegee, because if you just do one pull with the squeegee, the colour will just be ever so slightly lighter. So you can have a check to see whether you're happy with that as well before you adjust the ink anymore. Also, don't be scared of how much of a mess you're making. This t-shirt is just a giant experiment. So just put the screen down and print until your heart's content, or at least until you're sure that you've got the colour that you're looking for. That's all for this week, but join me next week for a step-by-step of screen printing a t-shirt. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe.